This fence
Do you
means
remember
nothing to
me,
the wind
Cowboy?
or the
I was
spirits
your
of this land.
childhood
We
love,
must
a
respect
Wild
the old
West
ways.
reunion.
I understand your words.
The boy,
We will
named
consider them
Jesse,
carefully.
was a lively and curious child. He had unruly brown hair that always fell into his eyes and a grin that could make anyone laugh, even on the hardest days. The girl, Emily, was gentle and thoughtful, with a quiet strength that often surprised those who underestimated her. She had a love for the small wonders of life, like watching birds in the morning or noticing the first buds of spring. From the moment they could walk and run, they were inseparable. They met when Jesse was 6 and Emily was 5, though they didn't know back then how important they would become to each other. It started one bright morning when Emily had lost her favorite doll in a dusty alley behind the bakery. Jesse, chasing a wayward chicken that had escaped his father's yard, noticed her tears and ran to help. He found the doll stuck under a crate and handed it to her with a triumphant smile. From that day on, a friendship formed that felt almost unbreakable, as if the town itself had brought them together for a purpose they did not yet understand. The children spent their days exploring every corner of the town and the surrounding fields. They would ride old, creaky horses along the trails, pretending to be brave cowboys and fearless adventurers. They discovered hidden streams, climbed tall oak trees, and even built a small fort behind the abandoned mill where they could hide away from the world. For Jesse and Emily, these moments were more than games. They were the beginning of memories that would stay with them forever. They learned to share, to care, and to laugh even when life in a frontier town was tough. Life in the town was not always easy. Families struggled to make a living, and the children often saw the hardships of the adults around them. Emily's father ran the general store, and he worked from sunrise to sunset to keep it open. Jesse's family owned a small ranch outside town, where he helped feed the animals, mend fences, and carry water for the horses. Despite these responsibilities, the children always found time for each other. Their friendship became a source of comfort, a small pocket of joy in the dusty, hard-working world they lived in. Sometimes, when the work was done, they would sit on the hill overlooking the town and watch the sunset. The sky would turn a brilliant mix of reds, purples, and golds, and in those quiet moments, they would share dreams. Jesse would talk about the adventures he wanted to have, the trails he wanted to ride, and the faraway towns he hoped to see. Emily would dream of books she wanted to read, stories she wanted to write, and the possibility of seeing places beyond the horizon. Though their dreams were different, they always promised each other that no matter where life took them, they would never forget one another. As they grew older, their bond deepened. They began to understand each other in ways that few others could. Jesse noticed Emily's gentle nature and admired her courage in standing up for what she believed in. Emily admired Jesse's energy, his sense of humor, and the way he could make any task seem like an adventure. They celebrated small victories together, like winning a local horse race or helping a neighbor with a big harvest. They comforted each other during losses, like the time a family friend lost their barn in a storm, or when an animal on Jesse's ranch fell ill. Through these experiences, they learned not only to enjoy the joys of childhood, but also to face challenges with resilience and hope. There were small signs even then that what they felt for each other was more than friendship. A lingering glance when one of them laughed, the quiet concern when one was hurt, the shared excitement over little surprises, all of these moments planted seeds of a deeper connection. Yet they were still children, and the world around them demanded their attention. School, chores, and the responsibilities of life on the frontier often pulled them apart, even if only briefly. Still, no matter the distance, they always found their way back to each other, whether it was to share a secret, a new discovery, or simply a moment of laughter. One day, when they were about 10 and 9 years old, they found an old, abandoned barn on the edge of Jesse's family ranch. It became their special place, a secret hideaway where they could escape the demands of the town. They cleaned it up together, swept the floors, patched the broken windows, and even made a small corner where they could sit and tell stories. They called it their fort, and it quickly became the heart of their adventures. Here they shared their fears, hopes, and dreams without fear of judgment. They carved their initials into a wooden beam, a silent promise that no matter what happened, this place and their bond would always remain. As the years passed, they began to notice changes. Jesse's interest in the world beyond the town grew stronger. He wanted to explore, to ride across open plains, to work on distant ranches, and to see life outside the narrow streets of their dusty home. Emily, while supportive, began to feel the weight of remaining in the town, helping her father and managing responsibilities that could not be left behind. Despite these differences, their connection never wavered. They would spend evenings on the hill, talking about what the future might hold, promising to remember the other no matter where life took them. Summer afternoons were often spent in playful competitions, races across the fields, trying to catch runaway calves, or seeing who could climb the tallest tree. But these games were more than just fun. They were lessons in courage, patience, and trust. Jesse learned to protect and care for someone other than himself, while Emily learned to be brave in the face of challenges, trusting that she could handle whatever came her way. These lessons, learned in the innocence of childhood, would stay with them for years, shaping the people they were becoming. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the town, Jesse and Emily made a pact. They promised that no matter what the future held, whether they would be separated by distance or by life's unpredictable turns, they would always remember each other. They shook hands, laughed at the solemnity of the moment, and promised again, sealing their words with a small hug that spoke volumes more than words ever could. And so, life in the town continued. Days were filled with work, chores, and the simple pleasures of frontier life. But for Jesse and Emily, there was always a magic that existed beyond the dusty streets and rugged hills. It was the magic of friendship, trust, and the beginnings of a love that neither time nor distance could erase. As they grew, the foundation laid in these early years would become the memory that both would carry through hardships, challenges, and the uncertainties of the adult world. Even though the town seemed quiet and ordinary to outsiders, to Jesse and Emily, it was the backdrop of a story much larger than themselves. Every horse ride, every secret fort, every shared laugh was a thread in the tapestry of a bond that would survive the years. Little did they know, the lessons learned, the promises made, and the hearts intertwined in these formative years would set the stage for a reunion many years later, one that neither of them could have imagined but both would long for deeply. The sun set fully that evening, painting the skies in gold and purple, as Jesse and Emily sat together on the hill. They were quiet, feeling the weight and warmth of a friendship that had grown into something neither of them could fully explain. The future was uncertain, the trails ahead unknown, but for that moment everything felt perfect. They watched as the stars appeared, one by one, imagining adventures far beyond the horizon, promising themselves silently that no matter where life led, this bond would never fade. And in that small town, under the vast expanse of the Wild West sky, two hearts began a journey that would carry them across years, miles, and experiences, yet always bring them back to the memories of their shared childhood. A love story quietly beginning, waiting for its next chapter. Time moved forward in the small Wild West town, as it always did, bringing change with it. Jesse, now in his late teens, had grown taller, stronger, and more confident. The boy who once played in the dusty streets with Emily had become a young man who could handle the hardest work on his family's ranch. Yet, despite the physical changes, his heart still held a special place for the girl who had grown alongside him. Emily, too, had matured into a thoughtful and determined young woman. She helped her father in the general store, managing accounts, organizing supplies, and speaking to townsfolk with a calm confidence that belied her years. The world was changing for both of them, and the bond they shared began to face challenges neither had anticipated. One hot summer afternoon, Jesse's father called him aside. "Son," he said, his voice steady but firm, "it's time you learned what it means to work beyond this ranch. There's a bigger world out there and you need to see it for yourself." Jesse understood immediately. Life on the ranch had been good, but the open plains and distant towns offered adventure, opportunity, and lessons he could not learn at home. His heart sank when he thought of Emily, the girl who had been his constant companion, his confidant, and his best friend. He knew leaving would be difficult, but he also knew it was necessary. The day Jesse left, Emily walked with him to the edge of town. The sun was high in the sky, casting long shadows across the wooden streets. Dust rose under their boots as they walked silently, both reluctant to break the weighty quiet. "Promise me," Emily said softly, her voice trembling slightly, "that you'll write to me." Jesse smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I promise," he said, gripping her hand for a moment longer than usual. They let go, knowing this might be the last time for months, or perhaps years, that they would walk side by side. As Jesse mounted his horse and rode away, Emily felt a strange emptiness in her chest. She tried to be strong, telling herself that this was only the beginning of new adventures, but a small part of her feared the distance would change things they could never get back. Jesse's journey took him across vast plains, rolling hills, and dusty trails that seemed to stretch endlessly into the horizon. He worked on ranches far from home, helping herd cattle, mend fences, and learn the skills necessary to survive in the unforgiving Wild West. Life on the trail was difficult. Days were long, filled with labor under the scorching sun, and nights were often cold, with only the stars and a small campfire for company. Jesse learned to rely on himself, to make quick decisions, and to adapt to the unexpected dangers of frontier life. Through it all, he kept Emily in his heart. He would find small moments to write letters, sharing stories of his experiences, though the dusty trails and the challenges of the road often delayed his messages. Back in town, Emily struggled with the absence of her childhood companion. Each morning, she would check the mailbox with hope, imagining a letter from Jesse telling her about new places, exciting experiences, or even just the mundane details of life on the ranches he visited. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, but often the mailbox remained empty. She began to feel the weight of waiting, a heaviness that was unfamiliar and uncomfortable. She threw herself into her work at the store, helping her father with customers, counting inventory, and managing supplies. But even in the midst of her daily responsibilities, her mind often drifted to the boy who had grown up beside her. Sometimes she would walk to the hill where they had spent so many afternoons watching the sunset. The wind swept through her hair as she sat on the same spot they had shared as children, staring at the horizon where Jesse had disappeared. She whispered his name softly, feeling a strange mixture of hope and sadness. Memories flooded her mind. The laughter they shared, the games they played, the promises they had made. She held onto these memories tightly, as if they could somehow bridge the miles between them. For Jesse, the distance was equally difficult. The challenges of frontier life kept him busy, but in quiet moments he found himself thinking of Emily. He remembered the fort they had built, the shared secrets, and the promises made under the golden sun. Each memory carried warmth and comfort, reminding him of a world beyond the endless plains and hard labor. Despite the hardships, the thought of returning home one day, or even just seeing her again, gave him strength. The letters he attempted to write became more than updates. They were a lifeline, a connection to a world that reminded him of love, friendship, and belonging. Months turned into years, and the world around them continued to evolve. Jesse grew into a skilled cowboy, respected by those who worked with him. He faced dangers on the trail, wild storms, runaway cattle, and even encounters with dangerous wildlife. But he always survived, learning lessons that shaped him into a resilient young man. Meanwhile, Emily became a pillar in her community, helping neighbors, assisting her father, and showing remarkable courage in moments that tested her strength. She learned to manage the store efficiently, earning the respect of adults who once doubted her abilities. Both of them were growing, changing, and learning, yet the invisible bond between them remained unbroken, tied together by memories, promises, and unspoken affection. Despite the passage of time, the longing for each other never faded. Emily often wondered if Jesse thought of her, if he remembered the laughter, the shared secrets, and the times they had spent riding horses across open fields. She imagined what he looked like now, how the sun had tanned his skin, how his eyes might carry the wisdom of experience, and yet still hold the kindness she had always known. She missed the familiarity of his presence, the way he made the ordinary seem exciting, and the sense of safety that came from being with someone who understood her completely. Jesse, too, carried the memory of Emily like a quiet flame in his heart. Every town he visited, every trail he rode, he would notice small things that reminded him of her. A bird landing on a fence post, a patch of wildflowers, or the way the wind felt in the evening. He often paused to imagine her there beside him, sharing a smile or a story, even if only in his mind. These thoughts kept him grounded, reminding him of where he came from and what he valued most. The years of separation also brought challenges neither could have anticipated. Misunderstandings, unreceived letters, and the unpredictability of life created gaps in communication. Both felt moments of doubt and worry, wondering if distance had changed the other person, or if life would take them down separate paths. Yet despite these uncertainties, the memories of childhood and the bond they had formed remained strong. It was as if time and distance could not diminish the connection they shared, only strengthen it in quiet, unspoken ways. One particularly harsh winter, Jesse found himself stranded at a distant ranch due to heavy snow and frozen trails. He thought constantly of Emily, wishing he could see her face, hear her voice, and share even the simplest moments with her again. Meanwhile, Emily endured the same winter in town, helping her father manage the store while keeping the home fires burning. They both faced challenges that tested their resilience, yet each remembered the lessons learned in their childhood: patience, courage, and hope. These lessons became their guiding light, giving them strength to face obstacles and continue on their respective paths. Spring eventually arrived, bringing new life to the town and the surrounding countryside. Jesse began to plan his journey back home, longing for the moment he would see Emily again. He thought about how much both of them had changed, yet he knew that some things, their bond, their memories, their feelings, would remain the same. Emily, too, noticed the signs of change in the town, the growth in herself, and the constant presence of Jesse in her thoughts. She could not predict the future, but she held on to hope, believing that destiny had a way of bringing people back together. And so, the years of separation taught them both many things. Jesse learned independence, resilience, and the realities of a world beyond his childhood home. Emily learned patience, courage, and the strength of her own heart. Both carried memories of each other through time, holding onto the promises they had made as children, knowing that life was unpredictable, but that true connections often endure beyond distance and hardship. Through every challenge, every lonely evening, and every quiet moment under the stars, Jesse and Emily remained connected by invisible threads of memory and affection. They had grown into different people, shaped by experiences far apart, yet the essence of their bond remained unchanged. The small town where they had played, laughed, and shared secrets continued to exist as a quiet anchor in their hearts, reminding them of a love that began in innocence, but had grown into something deeper with each passing year. It was this unbroken connection, nurtured through letters, memories, and quiet hope, that would eventually lead them back to each other. Though separated by miles, time, and life's unpredictable challenges, Jesse and Emily both carried the knowledge that some bonds are too strong to be broken, and that the past, no matter how distant, has a way of returning when the heart is ready. And so, with hearts full of longing and minds full of memories, Jesse continued his journey on the trail, and Emily continued her life in the town, both unaware of when the next chapter would begin, but certain that the bond formed in their childhood would guide them back to one another, across time, across distance, and across the vast, open plains of the Wild West. Years had passed since Jesse had ridden away from his small town, and the world had changed in ways both small and large. The dusty streets where he and Emily had played as children had become quieter, the old wooden buildings showing the signs of age and wear. Yet, the town remained a place filled with memories, each corner, alley, and hill carrying echoes of laughter and promises made long ago. Jesse had spent countless miles on the open trails, seeing towns, ranches, and landscapes that stretched far beyond anything he had imagined as a boy. He had faced storms, wild animals, and the harsh realities of life on the frontier, and through it all, he had grown into a strong, capable man. But despite his many adventures, one thought remained constant: Emily. The news of a return to his hometown had come unexpectedly. Jesse had been working on a distant ranch when he received word that his father's health was failing, and that the family ranch needed his help. It had been years since he had ridden these familiar trails, yet the thought of going home filled him with a mixture of excitement, nervousness, and uncertainty. Would Emily still be there? Would she recognize him after all these years? These questions lingered in his mind, creating a tension that matched the anticipation he felt with every mile he traveled closer to the town of his childhood. Meanwhile, Emily had grown into a remarkable young woman. Her once quiet, gentle demeanor had transformed into a strong, confident presence. She had taken over many responsibilities at the family store and had become a respected figure in the town. She had kept Jesse alive in her thoughts, even though letters had become scarce, and time had placed a quiet distance between them. She often wondered about his life, imagining the trails he rode, the people he met, and the experiences that had shaped him into the man she hoped he had become. She held onto hope that one day he might return, not knowing that the day she longed for was fast approaching. The morning Jesse returned was bright and clear. The town looked much the same as he remembered, with its familiar streets, the general store at the corner, and the hill where he and Emily had once watched sunsets. His horse's hooves clattered against the wooden planks of the main street, echoing through the empty early hours. Each familiar sight stirred memories that were both comforting and bittersweet. Jesse felt a lump in his throat as he rode past the old oak tree near the edge of town, remembering the countless afternoons spent climbing its branches with Emily, sharing secrets and dreams. Emily was tending to the store when she first noticed a stranger riding into town. Something about him caught her attention, not just his presence, but the way he carried himself, the calm confidence and the familiarity in the way he looked at the town. She stepped outside to get a better view, and the moment her eyes met his, her heart skipped. For a fleeting second, she questioned what she saw, wondering if it could really be him after so many years. As Jesse approached, a slow recognition settled over both of them. The boy who had been her childhood companion had become a man, yet beneath the changes, the essence of who he was, the laughter, the warmth, the courage, remained unmistakable. Their first meeting was quiet, almost tentative. Neither of them spoke immediately, as if words were too fragile to capture the significance of the moment. Jesse dismounted his horse, dust from the trail clinging to his boots, and took a deep breath before approaching Emily. "Emily," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of years and memories. She looked at him, her eyes wide, and whispered his name in return. It was a single word, yet it carried the weight of countless moments, both remembered and longed for. They stood there for a moment, simply looking at each other, letting the presence of the other fill the space that time and distance had created. As they walked together through the town, they talked about simple things at first: the weather, the town, people they both knew, and the changes that had occurred over the years. But even in these casual conversations, there was an undercurrent of deeper emotion, an unspoken acknowledgement of the years of separation and the bond that had never truly been broken. Emily noticed the way Jesse's eyes lit up when he spoke about the hills, the rivers, and the trails he had traveled. She listened intently, feeling a mixture of pride, nostalgia, and longing. She realized that, despite the years apart, the boy she had known had grown into someone she could respect, admire, and perhaps even love anew. Jesse, too, was struck by how much Emily had grown. She carried herself with grace, strength, and a quiet confidence that spoke of the challenges she had faced and overcome. He remembered her as a gentle child, and now he saw a woman shaped by experience, yet still possessing the warmth and kindness that had drawn him to her in the first place. He felt a deep sense of admiration and a renewed longing, realizing that the connection they had shared as children had matured into something far more profound than either of them could have anticipated. They spent the following days together, exploring the town and revisiting the places that held memories of their childhood. They went to the hill where they had once watched sunsets, sitting side by side in silence, letting the past and present merge. The fort they had built was still standing, though weathered by time, and they laughed at the memories of their games and adventures. Each shared story, each remembered moment, became a bridge between the past and present, strengthening their bond and reminding them of the love that had quietly endured over the years. During these moments, the air was filled with a mixture of joy and melancholy. They laughed at the innocence of their childhood games, but they also felt the weight of the years spent apart. There were moments of hesitation, when the past felt distant and fragile, and moments of connection, when it felt as if no time had passed at all. Through it all, they discovered a renewed sense of understanding, realizing that the bond they shared was resilient enough to survive the tests of time, distance, and change. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of gold and purple, Jesse and Emily found themselves sitting near the old oak tree. The wind whispered through the leaves, carrying with it memories of laughter, shared secrets, and promises made long ago. Jesse turned to Emily, his voice soft but steady. "I never stopped thinking about you," he said. Emily felt her heart swell with emotion, realizing that she, too, had held onto thoughts of him, wondering if he would ever return. In that quiet moment, the years of separation seemed to vanish, leaving only the connection that had always existed between them. As the days passed, they began to talk more openly about their lives, the experiences that had shaped them, and the dreams they still held. Jesse shared stories of the trails he had ridden, the ranches he had worked on, and the challenges he had faced along the way. Emily spoke of her life in the town, the responsibilities she had shouldered, and the growth she had experienced. Each story brought them closer, revealing the resilience, courage, and strength that had defined their years apart. They realized that, although they had changed, the core of who they were, the values, the dreams, and the bond they shared, remained unchanged. There were also moments of vulnerability, when they shared regrets and fears that had accumulated over the years. Jesse spoke of the loneliness he had felt on the trails, the times he had feared losing touch with the life he had left behind. Emily admitted the nights she had spent wondering if he would ever return, and the quiet sadness she had carried in his absence. These honest conversations, filled with emotion and trust, deepened their connection, allowing them to see each other not just as childhood companions, but as individuals who had grown, struggled, and endured. Through laughter, stories, and shared memories, Jesse and Emily began to rediscover the comfort of each other's presence. The town, which had once seemed ordinary, became a place of reunion, reflection, and renewed hope. Every corner, every street, and every hill carried echoes of their shared past, reminding them of the innocence, joy, and love that had started so many years ago. They realized that while the world outside the town had shaped them in ways they could never have imagined, their hearts had remained intertwined, ready to embrace the possibilities of a future together. By the end of their reunion, Jesse and Emily had not only rediscovered each other, but had also rediscovered the essence of what had made their bond so special. They laughed, they remembered, and they allowed themselves to feel the emotions that had been quietly growing for years. The Wild West town, with its dusty streets and familiar hills, became more than just a backdrop. It became a symbol of endurance, connection, and the power of love that can survive the passage of time. And as the sun set on the horizon, casting golden light across the town and illuminating the faces of two hearts finally reunited, both Jesse and Emily understood that this was not merely a meeting of old friends. It was the rekindling of something far deeper, a bond that had survived the trials of life, the distance of miles, and the passage of years. They knew that while the future was still uncertain, they would face it together, carrying the lessons, love, and memories of their past as a guide for the journey ahead. The days following their reunion were filled with both excitement and a quiet tension. Jesse and Emily spent long hours together, walking through the town, revisiting familiar places and sharing stories of the years they had been apart. At first, their conversation stayed on the surface, talking about the weather, neighbors, and small happenings in town. But beneath these ordinary words, there was a current of unspoken feelings, a mix of curiosity, longing, and the gentle fear of confronting what had been left unsaid for so long. They both knew that the years of separation had changed them, and they could no longer rely solely on childhood memories to define their connection. One afternoon, they found themselves sitting on the porch of the general store, watching the town's few visitors pass by. The wind carried the familiar scents of hay, leather, and wood smoke, a combination that felt comforting yet charged with the weight of memories. Jesse turned to Emily, his gaze steady but thoughtful. "Emily," he began, his voice low, "I need to tell you something I should have said years ago." Emily looked at him with anticipation, sensing that what he was about to say would not only explain the past but also shape the future. She nodded silently, encouraging him without interrupting the fragile moment. Jesse took a deep breath and spoke of the reasons he had left the town all those years ago. He described the opportunities that had pulled him away, the responsibilities he had felt toward his family, and the fears that had kept him from returning sooner. He admitted the moments of loneliness and doubt he had experienced on the trail, and confessed that he had often wondered if Emily would remember him, or if their bond would have faded over time. Emily listened carefully, her eyes reflecting a mixture of understanding, sadness, and relief. She could feel the sincerity in his words and the weight of the years he had carried silently. When it was her turn, Emily shared her own experiences. She spoke of the nights she had spent longing for letters that sometimes never arrived, the responsibility she had shouldered in her father's absence, and the moments she had doubted whether Jesse would ever return. She admitted that there were times when she had been hurt, frustrated, and even angry at his absence, but she also spoke of the hope and love that had never left her heart. Each word she spoke was filled with honesty, and Jesse felt a deep respect and admiration for the woman she had become. Their conversation, though emotional and sometimes difficult, was a turning point. For the first time in years, they were fully open with each other, sharing the truths of their pasts and the feelings they had both held so closely. The more they talked, the more they realized how much they had both changed and grown. Jesse had become a man shaped by the challenges of the open trail, resilient, patient, and thoughtful, but he had retained the warmth and humor that Emily had always loved. Emily, in turn, had developed a quiet strength, a sense of responsibility, and an understanding of life that only comes from experience. They both understood that the years of separation had not weakened their connection, but had instead given it depth, allowing them to appreciate each other in ways they never could have as children. Yet, alongside this understanding, there were also moments of regret. Jesse regretted the times he had allowed fear and uncertainty to keep him from returning sooner. He regretted the letters that had gone undelivered or delayed, and the opportunities to share his life with Emily that he had missed. Emily regretted the moments she had spent doubting him, the times she had felt abandoned, and the nights she had cried in silence, wishing for his presence. They acknowledged these regrets openly, and in doing so, they began to heal the invisible wounds of the past. The process was not easy, but it brought them closer, creating a space where honesty, forgiveness, and understanding could flourish. As they revisited their childhood haunts, old feelings surfaced naturally. The hill where they had watched countless sunsets became a place of reflection, where they spoke of dreams and aspirations they still held. The fort they had built, though weathered and worn, symbolized the foundation of trust and friendship they had established so long ago. Each shared memory acted as a bridge, connecting the past with the present and reminding them that, despite the years and the distance, their hearts had remained aligned. Small gestures, a brush of the hand, a lingering glance, a shared laugh, spoke volumes more than words ever could. There were also moments of hesitation, moments when both of them wondered if they were ready to embrace the depth of their feelings. Jesse feared that his years away, the experiences he had undergone, and the changes in both their lives might make it difficult to fully reconnect. Emily worried that the emotional distance of the past years might create barriers they could not overcome. Yet each time they faced these fears, they found reassurance in each other's presence. The bond that had begun in childhood was proving strong enough to withstand the uncertainties of adulthood. One evening, as the sky turned golden with the setting sun, Jesse and Emily walked along the edge of the town's fields. The wind carried the scent of grass and earth, familiar yet comforting, reminding them of all the afternoons they had spent together as children. Jesse stopped and turned to Emily, his eyes serious but filled with warmth. "I don't want to lose this again," he said quietly. Emily looked into his eyes, feeling a mixture of fear, relief, and love. "Neither do I," she replied softly. In that moment, they understood that the past could not be changed, but the future was theirs to shape together. As the days continued, they began to navigate the delicate balance between friendship, love, and the unspoken questions that lingered in their hearts. They laughed together, recalling childhood adventures, and shared stories of the hardships and triumphs of their adult lives. They also spent quiet moments in reflection, sitting together on the hill or walking through the town, appreciating the simple joy of each other's presence. It was during these moments that they realized the depth of their connection, the strength of their bond, and the potential for a future built on understanding, love, and shared experience. The town itself seemed to embrace their reunion. Neighbors noticed the change in their demeanor, the quiet joy that emanated from their presence, and the way they supported each other in small acts of kindness and cooperation. Jesse helped with chores on his family's ranch, with Emily occasionally joining him, and together they discovered a rhythm that combined their strengths and complemented their differences. Their interactions were not always easy. Disagreements arose, old habits and fears surfaced, and moments of doubt crept in. Yet, each challenge was met with patience, communication, and a growing sense of trust that had been nurtured over the years. Through this process, they began to explore what it truly meant to reconnect after so long apart. They acknowledged that the bond they had shared in childhood had matured, taking on new dimensions shaped by life's experiences. They learned to appreciate not only the qualities that had drawn them to each other as children, innocence, playfulness, and shared dreams, but also the resilience, wisdom, and empathy that adulthood had cultivated. This understanding allowed them to build a connection that was both familiar and new, rooted in the past yet open to the possibilities of the future. In quiet moments, they reflected on the journey that had brought them back together. They considered the lessons learned from years of separation, the importance of patience, the value of hope, and the power of enduring love. They also recognized that the experiences of the past had prepared them to face the challenges of the future together. The hardships, uncertainties, and moments of longing had not weakened their bond. Rather, they had strengthened it, giving them the tools to communicate, empathize, and support one another in ways that only time and distance could teach. By the end of this period, Jesse and Emily had not only reconciled the past, but had also begun to envision a shared future. They spoke openly about their hopes, dreams, and the life they might build together, balancing practicality with the enduring warmth of their connection. The Wild West town, once simply a place of childhood memories, had become a space of renewal, growth, and possibility. In the presence of one another, they discovered the joy of rediscovered love, a love that had been tested by time, tempered by experience, and strengthened by the unbroken threads of their shared history. And so, the chapter of truths, regrets, and old feelings drew to a close. Jesse and Emily had confronted the past, faced their fears, shared their hearts, and emerged with a clearer understanding of both themselves and each other. They realized that love, patience, and trust were the foundations upon which they could build a future, one that honored the memories of their childhood while embracing the possibilities of the life they could now create together. The town, the trails, and the hills that had once defined their past now stood as witnesses to a love that had endured, ready to guide them toward the next chapter of their story. The days following Jesse and Emily's emotional reunion were filled with quiet moments of reflection, laughter, and shared responsibilities. Life in the small Wild West town had returned to a rhythm of work, chores, and community events, but now each activity carried a new meaning. Every glance, every touch, every shared smile reminded them of the bond they had preserved through years of distance and uncertainty. They had faced the truths of the past, shared their regrets, and expressed the feelings they had long kept in their hearts. Yet now, a new question lingered between them. What would they do with this second chance? Jesse had returned to help his family's ranch, but the open trails that had defined his life for so many years called to him still. The idea of leaving the town again, of chasing the freedom and adventure that had shaped him, filled him with conflicting emotions. He loved the trails, the vastness of the plains, and the challenge of a life spent outdoors. Yet, the pull of Emily, the memories they had shared, and the depth of their newly rekindled connection made him hesitate. For the first time in years, he wondered if true happiness meant adventure alone, or if it could be found in returning to the people and places that mattered most. Emily, too, faced her own challenges. Her life had been rooted in the town, in her responsibilities to her family and community, and in the home she had built through years of dedication and effort. She had learned to be strong and independent, but the presence of Jesse reawakened feelings she had long kept hidden. She found herself imagining a life together, a future where they could face challenges side by side, support each other's dreams, and share both joys and hardships. Yet she also understood that life was unpredictable, and that choices made in the heart required courage, patience, and honesty. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned shades of orange and pink, Jesse and Emily walked along the familiar hill where they had shared so many childhood memories. The wind carried the scent of grass, earth, and distant wood smoke, a reminder of the life they had both known and loved. They walked in silence for a while, feeling the weight of the moment until Jesse finally spoke. "Emily," he said quietly, "I don't know what the future holds. The trails still call me, but staying here with you feels right, more right than anything else I've known." Emily listened, feeling a warmth in her chest that made her heart beat faster. "Jesse," she replied softly, "I don't know either, but I do know that I don't want to face the future without you by my side." The honesty in their words created a new sense of clarity. They realized that the future would not be defined by fear or uncertainty, but by the choices they made together. They could choose to embrace the life they had always imagined, combining the lessons of their past with the possibilities of the present. They could face the challenges of the Wild West, hard work, long days, unpredictable weather, and unforeseen dangers, not alone but together. This realization brought them both relief and hope, a sense that the love they shared was not only resilient, but also ready to grow into something even stronger. Over the following days, Jesse and Emily began to explore what a shared life might look like. They worked side by side on the ranch, tending to the animals, repairing fences, and preparing for the busy seasons ahead. They discovered a rhythm in which their strengths complemented each other. Jesse with his experience on the trails, his courage and his practical skills, and Emily with her intelligence, resourcefulness, and understanding of the town and its people. Together, they found a balance between adventure and stability, freedom and responsibility, past memories and future dreams. Evenings were spent on the hill or near the fort they had built as children. They shared stories, laughed over old games, and dreamed about the future. Jesse spoke of the trails he had ridden, the towns he had seen, and the lessons he had learned, while Emily shared her vision for the town, the store, and the life she hoped to build. They planned for both adventure and stability, realizing that their dreams could coexist if they were willing to face them together. These conversations were filled with honesty, compromise, and a deep understanding of each other's desires, creating a foundation for a life built on mutual respect, love, and shared purpose. But life in the Wild West was never without challenges. One morning, a sudden storm swept across the plains, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, and a threat to the ranch animals. Jesse and Emily worked tirelessly to secure the livestock, repair fences, and protect the land from damage. The storm tested their patience, endurance, and teamwork, but it also strengthened their bond. In the face of adversity, they realized that they could rely on each other, support each other, and face life's uncertainties as a united team. The storm became a symbol of their journey, not easy, sometimes frightening, but manageable with courage, determination, and trust in one another. As the weeks passed, the townspeople began to notice the change in Jesse and Emily. Their presence together radiated warmth, stability, and a sense of purpose. Neighbors admired the way they worked together, celebrated their shared successes, and supported each other in times of difficulty. This acknowledgement from the community reinforced the importance of their partnership, showing them that their decision to embrace a shared life was not only right for them, but also meaningful in the larger context of the town they called home. One quiet evening, Jesse and Emily returned to the hill where so many memories had been made. They sat together, watching the sun sink below the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields. Jesse took Emily's hand gently in his, feeling the strength, warmth, and connection that had endured through the years. "Emily," he said softly, "I want to face everything with you, from the calm days to the storms, from the ordinary moments to the extraordinary ones. I want to choose you every single day." Emily's eyes filled with tears of happiness and relief. "And I choose you, Jesse," she whispered, "every single day, no matter what comes." In that moment, they both understood the truth of their journey. Life in the Wild West was unpredictable, filled with challenges, long days, and uncertainty. But love, trust, and commitment could transform even the hardest paths into journeys worth taking. They had faced separation, hardship, and doubt, yet their bond had endured, guiding them back to each other and showing them the possibilities of a shared life. The following months were filled with building, planning, and dreaming together. Jesse helped Emily expand the general store to include a small section for supplies needed by ranchers and travelers. Emily organized community events, worked on improving local education, and supported her family, all while maintaining a partnership with Jesse that balanced love and practicality. Together, they faced the daily challenges of life in a frontier town, harsh weather, long hours, and unexpected problems, but always found strength and joy in each other's presence. Their love became a story in the town, not just of romance, but of resilience, patience, and hope. People admired the way they had reunited, worked together, and built a life rooted in trust and shared effort. Yet, for Jesse and Emily, the significance of their journey lay not in the recognition of others, but in the quiet moments they shared. The laughter after a long day, the comfort of a hand held during difficult work, and the joy of dreaming about a future built together. One evening, as winter approached and the first snow dusted the town, Jesse and Emily stood on the hill once more. The fields were quiet, the air crisp and fresh, and the sky painted in soft colors of pink and blue. They held hands, looking out over the land they had both come to love, thinking of the journey that had brought them here, from childhood friends to young adults separated by years and distance, and finally, to partners ready to face life together. "No matter what comes next," Jesse said, "we face it together." Emily nodded, her heart full, knowing that the challenges ahead would be easier because they would never face them alone. As the snowflakes fell softly around them, they realized that the choices they had made, choosing each other, embracing love, and honoring the bond that had survived time, were the most important decisions of their lives. They had learned that love is not just about passion or romance, but about trust, patience, and the courage to stand together through life's storms. Their journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every moment, teaching them lessons that would carry them forward into the future with hope, joy, and unwavering devotion. And so, under the same sky that had watched over their childhood, over the years of separation, and over the moments of reunion, Jesse and Emily began a new chapter of life together. Their hearts were full, their bond stronger than ever, and their dreams intertwined. They had faced the Wild West in all its beauty and challenge, and they had chosen each other, not just as companions but as partners for life. Together they walked back toward the town, ready to build a future filled with love, adventure, and the promise of countless sunsets yet to come.